So, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today in this space with Sergey. Sergey is from Ukraine and he's an old colleague of mine. We went to the same university some years ago when I was doing my master's at that time. But it's a pleasure to have you here, Sergey. Thank you for taking the time to participate. So, the intention with this call is simply to increase our awareness of what's happening in Ukraine at the moment. So the idea is that it's going to be an informal talk from the point of view of two normal people that are worried about the situation and that we simply want to help. I think it is important to analyze the situation and see how us as ordinary people, we can contribute, and particularly from the humanitarian point of view. So I know that there are some societies in the world, especially in Latin America, I will say, that are somehow divided about the conflict. Most people in the world actually support greatly Ukraine, but some others make arguments about why Russia has done that and even justify the war in a way. But I want to emphasize that what the facts are, right? And the fact is that there is a war, there is an invasion going on at the moment. There are women, there are children, there are people suffering and dying at this precise moment due to the decision that could be stopped by a simple call, right? And I'm not denying all the complex, geopolitical aspects that lead to this war or that are behind this conflict. But the truth is that at the end of the day, if you think about it, it's a decision of a single man who could stop this, right? So I think it is important to again focus on the humanitarian aspects and show solidarity with the people of Ukraine. That's what I asked Sergey to join me in trying to understand this conflict and see it from the point of view of an Ukrainian. So thank you very much, Sergey, for being here today and accepting this invitation. And yeah, maybe we can start. I want to start asking you a bit about yourself, like from which city in Ukraine are you from? And tell us, what do you do at the moment? And please.
All right. Okay, Alejandro, thanks a lot for inviting me. It's indeed very difficult time now, and it's also not only for Ukrainians, but for all of us. So I'm right now living in Germany. I'm working in a research center in the west part of Germany. Originally, I'm from Ukraine, from the west part of Ukraine. So my city is located in the mountains region. It's also far away from the Kyiv, from the battlefields, right? My parents live there, so right now they are safe because it's still far away. But there were some also Russian rockets nearby, so they bombed a local airport. But in general, they are safe, I'd say.
Wow. When was the last time you were in Ukraine?
I was before the corona, and then with the corona, it was a bit challenging to go there because Ukraine was in a red zone. But then also my brother visited me here, and my mother visited me here. So I was, But I try to go often there, but now with these events, I cannot go there. But I wish to be there and also support Ukraine there.
Of course, but I understand that anyway you are supporting from Germany, right? You're working this donation center.
That's true. We do. We collect some donations for Ukraine, and it's really nice to see that people here support Ukraine. So they donate a lot, and there's a huge solidarity.
That's great. So Sergey, I have this question that, from outside, we got the impression that the opinion in Ukraine was divided before the war, let's say. So some people in the East are pro-Russians in this region of Donbass, right?
Yes.
Also in Crimea, there was this referendum years ago, and they apparently decided to become part of Russia, although there are some kind of doubts. I think not many people voted, from what I understood. But so the question could be what is this the case? Why the East and the West is different?
So this is, of course, the history. And the history is really challenging. The history of Ukraine is challenging. So we share the same origin with Russia, Belarus, and well, Ukraine. And the origin is Kievan Rus. So it was a state what was created approximately in the 8th or 9th century. And the capital of this state was Kiev. So it was the biggest country actually in Europe at that time. And Moscow city was created much later. It was created in the 12th century. And it was also created by the son of the Kievan king. And the problem of this country was that it was federal. So the kids of the king, they stay in the different cities. And when king dies, there was a fight who will sit in the
between
Kiev.
the children. Yeah.
Yes. So this made the country very big. And in the 12th century, no, 13th century, Mongol Tatar, they invaded very easily this country. And they actually could invade all Europe easily, but luckily, the Genghis Khan died, and the son of Genghis Khan, he decided to stop and move back to claim the throne, of his empire.
Okay.
Yes. So then what happened? Gradually, this empire becomes weaker, and then the territory of modern Ukraine, they united with Lithuania. So it was a big kingdom, Lithuanian kingdom, which gradually united with Poland, and it was created Rich Pospolita. I don't know what's exactly English name.
And for the kingdom, yeah, I'm not sure, but
So that was about Ukraine, and the territory of the north of Kievan Rus, which was like Moscow, and there were also many kingdoms. They were also a bit more independent from Mongol Empire. So then they started growing and building what's called Moscow Empire. So it was not still Russia; it was a Moscow Empire. Regarding Ukrainians, so they were part of Poland or Poland-Lithuanian kingdom. So actually, so what was happening here, that Ukrainian language was also kind of forbidden. So it was not allowed to study in Ukrainian. So this part of Ukraine was under influence of the Poland.
At the time, yeah.
And then there was many also uprising against Poland. And for a short time, there was it's in the 17th century where Ukrainians tried to create their state. It was so this was Zaporizhian siege. It's so these people call it Cossacks. They call yes. So.
Usually I relink Cossacks with the Russians actually, but I didn't know.
No, this is different. So there were also Don Cossacks. It's in a river Don. It's actually nearby the Azov. Yes.
Okay.
So those Cossacks, they play also important role for Russia and for the Poland, because they're protecting their areas from the Tatars. So they're in the south of Ukraine, there were Tatars, it's in Crimea.
Yeah.
And these Tatars, they had support from the Ottoman Empire. But they very often attacked, let's say, Poland or Russia, so there was no protection. And the Cossacks, they play also a very important role to stop those attacks.
Okay.
And then since they tried to create their state, they got a lot of victories against Poland, but the situation also was very difficult because they were surrounded from one side by Russia, from another side by Poland, and from the south from Tatars.
Tatars, yeah.
And but they were very much independent. They had a right to choose their leader, and also education was, so it was. I think it was like 80% of Ukrainians were educated in this area.
Okay.
And then what happened, that Ukrainians decided to kind of unite with Russia.
Mm-hmm. What century was that?
It was
already 19th
actually
century?
it was no, it was the 17th century. So it was 1848. So there was this negotiations that Ukraine gets protections from Russia.
Okay.
This was a really mistake for Ukraine, because after that, Russia, so Ukraine started losing their independence.
Right.
And then also again, Ukrainian language was prohibited, so you couldn't get education in Ukrainian language. This is actually the time when Russian Empire, it was not the Russian Empire, it was Moscow Empire, becoming more powerful and more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peter the Great, they called Moscow Empire as a Russian Empire. So Russian is kind of Kievan Rus. This is this is where this name
comes from. Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then during, so one part of Ukraine were under Poland, and another part was under Russian Empire. So in the Russian Empire situation was a bit more difficult for Ukrainians, because there was a slavery, and again Ukrainian language was forbidden.
Yeah.
So it was
just a question. So during this time, but Ukraine became, at least the east part or Central East became part of Russia. Literally part of Russia, or they were just like an agreement. There was no independence.
Mostly, at the beginning, it was independent, let's say, right?
Okay.
But then, with the time, Russians put their troops in the cities. They, they didn't allow to choose by themselves the leader. So the leader of this area was assigned from the Russia. And then there was a battle between Sweden and Russia.
Okay, Sweden and Russia, yeah.
So this Sweden, it was a battle in Poltava. Yeah, maybe you know about Karl XII. So this was so, and in these battles, Ukrainians joined as Swedish, but they lost this battle. And then this Cossacks, let's say, state was totally destroyed.
Okay.
So then Ukraine, totally lost any chance to participate in, let's say, in a political life.
Okay.
And education, actually, yes. So then the level of education was reduced from the 80% to, I don't know, so maybe like 5% people were only educated.
Wow.
And of course, this is slavery, because Ukraine is the soil, and Ukraine is very, how you call it, fertile, So this was mostly the producer of some agricultural stuff.
Yeah.
And the slavery in Russia, lasted till 19th century.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the one thing.
When you mean slavery is, actual slavery, like the one we had in Latin America, that they were selling people, or they were forced to, politically.
Yes, they were forced. So these people, they live in the land, and they were, forced to work for exactly.
Okay, I see.
It's a bit different.
Like feudalism, but extreme feudalism somehow. Like people stay in the land and they're forced to work, and that's their life. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So mostly Ukraine was agricultural. People were working on the land, and then everything changed. Also after Second World War. So after Second World War, there was a short time when Ukraine got independence. So it was from 1918s to 1919s. At the time, they tried to build, Ukrainian state. They had their own army. They had their president.
But this was still during the Soviet Union era, right?
No, it was Soviet Union didn't start. So Soviet Union started after the revolution in Russia.
You mean then after the First World War? You were talking about
this is the first one.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, so you got in the Ukrainian were independent during a decade or so. So
this was So this war was very tough for all countries, and then Russian Empire. There was a revolution in Russian Empire.
right.
So actually, after this revolution, Russia steps out from the Second World War, right? And Ukraine actually got for a short time independence. Actually, they got this independence also with the support of Germany.
Okay.
Because so the Russian Empire fights against. So Russian Empire was in the side of the Entente against Germany.
I remember for the First World War. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then so after this revolution, we'll say communists got the power in Russia.
Right.
And they then attacked Ukraine.
Okay.
Because Ukraine was very strategically very important. And then unfortunately Ukraine lost this also battle, and then it was still Ukraine was at that time divided. So Poland got best part of Ukraine.
Okay.
After the First Second World War, and Russians occupied Ukraine. So this was when the Soviet Union started, and then it was created Ukrainian Socialistic Republic, and
And how did it work in the Soviet Union era? I mean, it's like you were, I don't know how to say, this federalistic way of people. I mean, Ukraine was a country, but within the Soviet Union, right? So could you say that it was a country, or it was just like a region between a country? I mean,
so I would say it was I'll say this in English. Just wondering. So
like
it was a
state,
republic.
right?
It was a state. It was a state, but it was controlled from the Moscow, right? So so there was a communist party, and this party actually decided what should us as republics do, and so we had the same law. We had
Everything was same.
So there was no independence, so this is not something that you are part of Soviet Union and you have a right, to decide something by your own.
No, you couldn't do that.
And this was time really also very tough for Ukraine, because especially when the Stalin came into power. So, and this is because Soviet Union at the time was mostly agricultural. And they tried to do industrialization. And this process was very, very brutal. And also Ukrainians, they didn't want to give up their, goods to the Soviet Union. So they started kind of building this, taking away from people in the villages their goods to build this kind of kolkhoz. This is something that so Ukraine didn't want to do that, and then they decided to punish them. So they take all goods from people.
But you mean goods like harvest, like the food that
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And they people started dying. So this was really a famine. It's especially in 1932-33. Where millions of people died because they didn't have a food. So what Russian officials say, this was a natural famine. So this was not it wasn't. So the Russians say it was not artificial, but this is not true, because they also sent a lot of foods to Bulgaria, to other countries. And there are many evidence that people were dying just on the streets, and so there are also many laws that they shoot down the people if someone tries to steal, some wheat from the field. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yes, and also it's kind of was also Ukrainian language was what to say,
forbidden, I guess.
Which was forbidden. So basically, there was a lot of pressure. So they try to make the one language, kind of make the same people, the same culture,
Yeah, they want to homogenize the whole country, let's say.
Yes. So at the time, Ukraine in the West was under Poland. There were also some fights again. So for the independence of Ukrainian independence, it was mostly nationalistic movements.
Okay.
And then when the Second World War started, it's actually after agreement between let's call it Molotov-Ribbentrop agreement. So when Soviet Union and Germany they decided to divide Europe, right?
Yeah.
So Soviet Union invaded Poland. Basically, it's Ukraine and Belarus, west part of Ukraine.
Okay.
And Germany occupied Poland.
Yeah.
And as I said, there was also some nationalistic movement in the west part of Ukraine against Poland. Now this nationalistic movement starting fight against the Soviet Union.
Okay. Yeah.
And there are also some nationalists that they supported Hitler, but also some nationalists that fight against Hitler and fight against the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Yes. So then there was this Second World War, and yes, and after the Second World War, this still nationalistic movement in the west part of Ukraine continued till 1956. So almost, I think, for 15 or 10 years. So were fight against. I mean, well, basically, the Soviet Union against those nationalists in this part of Ukraine. So you see, so east part of Ukraine was mostly affected by Russia in the sense that Ukrainian language was not allowed, and a lot of people died in the east part of Ukraine during those famines. And also, I have a friends from the Mariupol. It's in the east part of Ukraine. So, so they say that their grandparents arrived to Ukraine from Russia, and they arrived to the empty villages. And the soldiers told them, "You can choose any house you want," and because there were no one in those villages. This is a reason actually why east part of Ukraine is mostly Russian speaking, and probably Russian culture is more closer to them than some some Western.
But it seems to me. And do you think, for instance, when the Soviet Union collapsed, when the borders were kind of made again or from scratch, let's say, so there was, I mean, why this region went from Ukraine and not from Russia at that time?
So ethnically it was still mostly Ukrainians, right? So this is one thing is a language. It was also, Ukrainian language was not very popular, because if you want to study in university, you want to, Russian language is more fashion.
Okay.
This is what I think.
Okay. And in terms of religion, I mean, people.
This is religion. We are mostly Ukrainians, Orthodox.
Orthodox, right?
But
there are Jewish, there are Muslim also.
There is Muslims, especially in Crimea, or so there were many Tatars in Crimea before Second World War, but then Stalin moved Tatars from Crimea to Siberia.
Wow!
And he settled a lot of Russians there. So indeed, there are a lot of ethnic Russians in the Crimea. So I have to say that Crimea was part of Russian Republic. It was a part of Russian Republic, and I don't remember when. So the Soviet Union decided to move Crimea to Ukrainian Republic, and the reason was because Crimea was not very well supplied with the needs from the Russian Republic. So it was much easier to supply, especially to do some agriculture if it's connected to Ukraine.
Yeah, it was easier.
And the price also was for that Ukraine gave up some areas of its territory to Russia.
Ah, okay. I didn't know that part.
So there is this area where this Don was given to Russia, and Crimea was actually, it was a decision not by one person, but it was a communist party, and this was economically very important, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's quite a story, I would say, right? It's like there are many influences within Ukraine, and people have been fighting for their independence or this right to freedom for a long time, but at the same time, all these forces, all those geopolitical issues have been there for centuries.
Absolutely,
it's not an easy thing to solve.
Yeah, the situation was really very complicated, right? So I mean, because to build a state, you need something that unites people, right? But then when you see the one part of people see the future, so the people see their future in the different directions. That's a problem. But Soviet Union broke down because of the economical problems, right? And also people, they actually they vote against the Soviet Union. So if there was election, not election, but referendum in Ukraine, and all actually republics. And I think 90% of people voted for the independence of Ukraine.
Okay.
So people really tired from this situation. But then the problem is corruption. So that's the biggest problem of Ukraine was the corruption. So Ukraine was a really poor country. It was really very difficult time when Soviet Union was broken, because all economy, all connections between different republics, it becomes very challenging. And then the thing is, so this was the economical reason why people started having this nostalgia for the Soviet Union, especially in the east part of Ukraine. People in Ukraine, they have a lot of relatives in Russia. Myself, I have also relatives in Russia. So people see that Russians live better than in Ukraine. There was all, and they kind of now had this feeling that Russia is this better choice.
Okay, so they start kind of
they
would prefer to be with Russia, or they were missing perhaps the past.
Yeah, so they didn't believe in Ukraine, I say, and so that's a problem. And also, Ukrainian economy strongly depended on Russia. So any movements of Ukraine, like to join the European Union or NATO, meet a lot of pressure from Russia. So they simply stopped the gas supply.
It has a lot of power in a way over Ukraine, right? But at the same time, people, for instance, when there was this strike, these revolutions in 2014, right? I think the Maidan, I don't know how to pronounce Maidan.
Yeah, so we had two revolutions. One was 2004. It was the Orange Revolution. And it was again basically battle between two candidates, one from pro-Western or from pro-European candidate, and another one from pro-Russian. And so it was like, I think it's almost 50-50% that people supported from West, one candidate, maybe a bit more, or,
Okay, but very
probably a bit more, because during these elections, there were a lot of falsifications, right? So there's a reason why this revolution erupted, because of the falsifications. And it was really recorded when the buses were moving from one city to another city with this election list, and this made people very angry, actually.
Okay.
And this was a reason after this revolution, pro-Russian candidate Yanukovych, he lost this election. But then again,
he won again, right?
Then he won again, exactly. It was really difficult to move to the West because we needed to do a lot of reforms, and Ukraine didn't do that. And then again, corruption, and then strong dependence on Russia. So of course, Russia didn't welcome this thing, and yeah.
Yes, but even though this influence from Russia, especially the East, when Yanukovych, became a president, then you get the second revolution, if I'm correctly right.
Absolutely.
And that was very, from the scenes I have seen, at least, very, very bloody,
brutal.
right? Brutal, exactly. It was crazy.
And then this is again about it was a brutally beaten protesters, and this was really very brutal. And also the reason for that was that Yanukovych rejected, that Ukraine join this European association. So Ukraine had to sign this. Then in the last day, Yanukovych said, we will not do that. And he went to the Moscow. Then some students went on the streets. They were protesting, and they put tents on the streets, and
they stayed there. I think you were there at the time, right?
No, actually, I was in university. At the beginning, I was in a coast, but then after those students were beaten by police. And then it made really people very angry, and then this whole revolution started.
And this repression, for the people, at least in Latin America, I think they can empathize. The people from Chile and Colombia, we have this. Well, when I check the scenes from this revolution in Ukraine, it reminds me immediately what happened in Latin America a few years ago. Regardless of the ideological point of view, but it's the same. The repression from government, and people are unhappy with what's going on, and then it's just repression. So it's always tricky, I guess. But the point is it means something. It means people were really, even though they got this influence from Russia, when I see this video, this scene, it's clear for me that people wanted to become Europeans. From EU, right? Because it was a very, very strong, and it started with the young people, but then there were, all people as well. Even I have seen people from retired from the military who were supporting the students. It was the whole society, right?
Yeah, absolutely. People actually before that were, I would say, mostly passive. Of course, it was very painful decisions that we do not join the European Union. So because, how many benefits you got, and there was a hope that the country will start doing some reforms, fight against corruption. But the trigger was really the brutal behavior of the police.
Yes.
That's so they basically started using the force against peaceful protests.
Exactly.
And then people realize that this is not something good. If our government uses force, what will be next?
Their own people.
Exactly.
And
of course, Yanukovych was getting a lot of support from Russia, and people in the east part of Ukraine, they didn't understand a lot what is happening on. Not all of them, but especially I think the older people, because I had to say also, in Russia, they don't have independent mass media, right? So this is they show information only from one side, and people in the east part of Ukraine, they used to watch Russian TV channels.
Okay, they have also this influence from the Russian media.
Yes, but then after annexation of the Crimea, situation really changed, and now we can see, half Ukrainians in the east part of Ukraine resist Russian invasion. So no one wants to be a part of Russia. No one wants to be, in the same situation like, for instance, Belarus, right? So so no one wants to be, Yanukovych back to Ukraine. The same.
I see. But some people, I mean, probably not in Europe, but in some other parts of the world, people are divided in the sense that, I mean, some people even argue that, okay, Putin had reasons to invade Ukraine because there was the US and Euro and the NATO that push, Russia and Ukraine to this situation. So what do you think? I mean, or what would you tell these people?
Yeah, so okay, so here are the few things. I don't see, for instance, the pressure on Ukraine from NATO or Europe to join these organizations. Actually, Europe is not really interested that Ukraine join European Union because Ukraine is a poor country, and it means they have to do a lot of support to, to bring Ukraine to this level to join.
Yeah, there's some requirement, right?
It's exactly regarding NATO. It's also I don't think that it's possible for Ukraine to join at this stage, right? So, and there's of course no force, no one force Ukraine to join a NATO.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe this, this idea that we should blame US or Europe because of this situation, right? And another problem is the guarantees of Ukrainian security. So Ukraine, after the Soviet Union broke down, had a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
And this was a country that had set the largest amount of nuclear rockets in the world. So after Russia, United States, there was Ukraine.
Yeah.
And then Ukraine gave up
these
weapons, but I mean, there was agreement, right? So between Ukraine, Russia, United States, United Kingdom, that kind of about the security of Ukraine.
So do you think? Sorry. I mean, do you think things would have been different if Ukraine still would have? I mean, still have this weapon? I don't know.
No, this is another point. The point is that we give up this. But we kind of had this agreement that those countries are responsible for Ukrainian
security or
Ukrainian security and security, I would say, right? And then in 2014, Russia had did an annexation of the Crimea, and you see, so this doesn't work, So Ukrainians feel them not secure.
Yeah.
And then if they consider Russia as an aggressor, so what should Ukrainians do? They have to protect themselves. And of course, Russia has a much more power. It's much more economically stronger, right?
Yeah.
So these talks about joining NATO, they are not, just to attack Russia. Ukraine is not planning to attack Russia. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But this is what Russian says, that Ukraine is planning to attack Russia. And I mean, this thing was doing Hitler, right? So he is actually, they made this fake about the Poland, and then they invaded the Poland.
To invade them, yeah. Maybe it's just a move or an excuse. It's true. I mean, from outside, I mean, I could understand the Ukrainian in a way if they would want to join NATO, also because they feel insecure, right?
Yes.
But then there is the argument like, okay, Russian feel insecure if Ukraine become part to NATO. So it's, yeah.
There's also a question. Look, I mean, I understand this point, right? But then the question is if really the NATO is a threat to Russia. I mean, Russia has a nuclear weapon, right? And the NATO, claims themselves as a defensive bloc.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you think logically, it's not possible that NATO attack Russia.
Mhm.
I mean, there's so many countries in this bloc, and Europe gets some more benefits if they don't have a war with Russia. You know, especially Germany. So Europe really depends on the Russian resources.
Yes.
So
Well,
for no one is the war is a solution. You know,
yeah, no one wants this war. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. So I don't think that this is really a threat for Russia, but this is a threat for the Putin propaganda, because he claims that Ukrainians and Russians are the same. There are no Ukraine, and this is a part of Russia. So he doesn't recognize Ukraine, right?
Yes.
And then he wants to control Ukraine. And of course, if Ukraine becomes more economically stable, has its powerful army, it is not good for Putin because he's losing Ukraine. So he prepares to have a Ukraine like a Belarus.
Okay, but then why does he want Ukraine so badly? I mean, because it's the origin, the history, or is it strategically the access to the sea? I don't know. What do you think?
It is well, it is strategically important. Then Putin want to build again something kind of like a Soviet Union.
So if you want to extend an empire also.
Exactly. And then he calls Ukrainians fascist, and then he calls his operations as a demilitarization of Ukraine, denazification of Ukraine, and he calls Ukrainian president as a Nazist, but he's a Jew, you know.
Jews. Yeah, it's a bit crazy.
And then if you follow all the Russian TV channels, it's all of them, they say they are fascists in Ukraine and they are, you know, humiliating the Russians in Ukraine. We have to save the Russians there. But this is not true. So, I mean, this is also ridiculous. He started bombing pro-Russian cities. He started bombing Kharkiv. He started bombing Mariupol. And
it's crazy.
His troops enters Kherson, and the one is meeting the soldiers, Russian soldiers, with the flowers. You know, they meet them with Ukrainian flags, and they're asking them, "What are you doing here?"
Well, that's a good point. I mean, why do you think people are fighting so bravely? You know, even though, yeah, the army, they are outnumbered, right? I mean, where do the Ukrainians get so much motivation to fight?
I think, you know, what Putin did good for Ukraine, he united Ukraine. So before this, Ukrainians really had this, you know, Russia was sympathetic for Ukrainians. But after annexation of the Crimea, and then seeing what's happening in Luhansk and Donetsk, people realize, you know, what is a Russia. Also seeing what's happening in Russia. So they suppress all opposition. They, you know, try to kill Navalny and put him in the prison. And you will not see any opposition. And if people go to the streets to protest against, and police brutally beat them and put in a prison. So there are a lot of people in the prison in Russia. And then people also see what's happening in Belarus. They see this protest, and you know, so, and he sees that Putin just, you know, support this president, this dictator Lukashenko. They also see benefits, you know, to make a country democratic.
Yeah. So somehow then the action of Putin has united people, and they feel more like united, like more patriotism has rise.
That was a problem for Ukraine for a long time, to be united. And now Putin did a really great job, but unfortunately he's killing a lot of people in Ukraine, and this makes people even more angry. Actually, no one expected. You know, I mean, we used to read some smart people, you know, whether Putin attack Ukraine, and everyone was saying that he will not attack because economically it's stupid, and the war is stupid, and you know, so till the end I didn't believe that he will do this. I thought this is the way how he wants to talk to West, you know, to get some guarantees that Ukraine not join NATO, and but he also put a lot of troops in the border of Ukraine. He made a huge pressure.
Exactly.
And now they are also saying that Ukrainians were preparing to attack Russia. And but this is stupid how Ukrainian, would like to attack Russia if there is like hundreds of thousands troops in the border.
But that's a good point. I must confess that I didn't give credit also to that at the beginning. I mean, I didn't think Russia was going to invade Ukraine at all. So you didn't expect this to happen, really?
I saw that what's happening. So,
okay.
I mean, they definitely were preparing people in Russia for this. Because if you see also Russian TV channels, they are showing Ukrainians killing Russians. I mean, everything is a fake. So they really make these fake stories, and there's no other sources of the information. Right. So I saw this. I mean, this propaganda against Ukraine, and then also those amount of troops. But honestly, I didn't expect that this would be like really war. I saw there's probably some small attacks or some small provocations, and
or probably just in the east. I mean, something I didn't understand. If one of the main argument was that there was this war and they want to, protect Russian in the east or support them. But you don't invade the full country. You don't go for the capital for that, right? I mean, it's.
That's the thing. Probably Putin wanted to surprise everyone, to be because probably the best tactic, to be unexpected. At some point, it was kind of expected why he's putting a lot of troops there. And
I thought it was bluffing, to be honest. But
yeah, we also thought, but also for US, let's call it. They were telling that Putin is going to attack Ukraine.
Yeah, and none of us believed it. I mean, at least not me.
Yes. And so this was a bit unexpected. Of course, also East part was a bit more prepared, right? Because if you see now on the map what's Russian invaded, they cannot move easily on the east, because this part was preparing to defend during 8 years after the revolution. But they relatively easy, attacked from the Crimea and from the Kiev side, but they cannot capture any big cities because people really made a huge resistance. Also, Russians are not very motivated to fight Ukrainians.
I could assume they are not. Yes, not many. There's this story that they thought, I mean, some of them thought that actually they were going for a military, training. But not really entering to war.
Yes, this is true. And it's also really sad to see this, because there are many the troops or the guys that they captured by Ukrainians, they are not really soldiers, but they are policemen. So they were target was to stay in the city and to stop a protest by locals, but they're not really to attack the cities, but they were sent to attack the cities. And really, it's a lot of just young people, young soldiers were just killed because they don't have an experience to fight.
To fight in that war,
And they were very dismotivated. And when they come to the cities and they see Ukrainians with the flags, and no one is really welcome them, and they feel them like occupants.
The invaders. I mean. Wait, about the flag, I always wanted to know the meaning. Do you know the meaning of the Ukrainian flag? I mean,
sure.
Yellow, blue flag. What
it's this very peaceful flag, right? So yellow, it means the sky, and blue means sky, and yellow means wheat. So the Ukraine is a very fertile land, and for the centuries it was famous because the production of the wheat and sunflowers.
sunflower, yes.
Actually, yes. So this was the first time when this flag was, I think it was in 1887 or something. This was the time when in Europe there were many industrial revolutions, and somehow also in Ukraine and in the west part of Ukraine and Lviv. So this was the first time when this flag was hung on some Ukrainian buildings in the west part of Ukraine.
Nice. Yes, you're right. It's very peaceful. It's good, I think, compared to some other flags that have this story of like bloody story. But this is very, very hopeful.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it. Yeah.
And it's also for represents Ukrainians. So we don't want war. We want a peace, and we just want to have our own right to choose our future.
Like every other country, sure. Yes. To have the right to decide about your own future.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
We don't want to go back when big countries decide what you should do, and
yes. What about President Zelensky, Sergey? I mean, I assume the popularity varies like in all countries, but what do you think nowadays people in Ukraine in the street thinks about President Zelensky?
Yeah, so he's very popular nowadays. I mean, it's of course tough time, and he's a guy who was not scared, right? So he didn't leave Kyiv. He stayed there. Kyiv was bombed by Russia, but he still stayed there, and he made many talks, and so people like him so much now. He was popular before. He was the most popular, actually. Even if there were a second election, he would win them because he had like 30% of support. But now I think it's even more.
Yeah, I think he has done a lot for Ukraine at this point, right?
Yeah, so he
encouraged to the people, and he stayed and showing that
he's encouraging people, and he's also talking to other presidents, and so he's respected.
Yeah. And okay, sorry, I just maybe a tricky question, but yeah, how do you think this war can come to an end? I mean, is any possible solution you can imagine?
Yeah, probably there are a few possible directions. So first one is the thing is that Russia cannot invade Ukraine, right? So Russia doesn't have enough forces to invade all country, put police in every city. So Russia will not be able to do that. And that's why they try. So at the beginning, their plan was that they will do quickly. They will have this blitzkrieg. And they capture Kyiv, and they put their Yanukovych in the power instead of Zelensky. And then the kind of Yanukovych asks the help of Russia, and Russia helps them. And they also expected the people will support Russians in the east part of Ukraine. So this didn't happen, and now they try to capture as much as possible cities to get some benefits in some negotiations. I think at the end, if this scenario goes, there will be some negotiations, because Russia also cannot, carry this war for too long
for a long time. Yeah, this is something I could not imagine. I mean, even if they conquer some cities, people, I mean, the whole or most of the population are against the Russian army, so you cannot hold this.
No, you cannot hold them.
Not sustainable.
It's absolutely. So we have this. Also, a lot of people had their weapons, and there was some partisan war against them, and but they also, they captured some cities, not the biggest cities, some small cities. And they also do some tortures against people. So they try to find who is organizing these protests. So those people disappear already. Some of them were killed. And so they now some dirty techniques have to, to handle this situation. But of course, you cannot do it in a whole country.
Yes. Wow.
So I think they will try to stabilize their forces in already occupied cities, suppress opposition, and kind of to force Ukraine and to go for the negotiations in their conditions. But Ukraine will not do that. So Ukraine will stay till the end. But at some point, I think they will meet. And so this is a question. You know, how much Russia invades Ukraine, and
yeah, like how.
But this is also cool.
Which part of the country is going to be covered? How much pressure could you put to go to the negotiation table, right? Basically.
Absolutely, yeah. So, but I think Ukraine will not accept some, you know, some Russian conditions. So they force Ukraine to recognize Donbass, Lugansk, and Crimea. You know, but Ukraine will not accept this. So, and I think that at the end, Russia will have to. It will put a lot of pressure on Russia because there are a lot of sanctions on Russia already, and also, it makes tension in Russian elites. So there's a question how much they are happy with this, and there's also a question how much is Putin secure, right? So I actually hope for some crew in Russia, and but I don't know what will happen.
Yeah, it's hard, but then. But yeah, this is something I will want also to emphasize, because one thing is the government, right? The Russian government, and another thing is the people. There are many people, many Russians, even from abroad, that have seen they're against the war, and within Russia as well. But of course, they have been punished. Now I think there is this kind of new law whatsoever that they cannot protest. They will go.
Yeah, so there was one priest that in the church, you know, he prayed against the war, and now they arrested him because in Russia it is forbidden to say something that I'm against the war. You see, so I'm against the war. I mean, it's
well, this is
the worst. It is really very horrible. But I have to admit that still Putin has a huge support in Russia. So, and so I think a lot of people still support this war. I mean, this we can also hear from some conversation between the soldiers in Ukraine and their parents. So there was one conversation when the son called his mom and say, so we are in trouble here, we are blocked here, our tank cannot go. And his mom said, what's happened to your tank? You know, maybe you have to repair it. Why you didn't bomb Kharkiv yet? You know, so I mean, come on, your son is in the danger. You know, he can be killed, and you know, so it's still a great, yes, exactly. So
yeah,
it's really tough. I don't think there will be some revolution in Russia, because if you see, I mean, it's kind of remind me also of Nazi, right? In Germany, there was no revolution during Hitler time.
No.
And I don't think it's possible in Russia. So there is probably maybe, you know, active people, maybe like 15% of 20% they can go and protest, and but that's probably not enough to do some revolution. So the only pressure could be some economical sanctions, and that elite oligarchy in Russia, they're losing a lot, so they're kind of against this.
But this sanctions, I mean, I'm pretty sure this affect also the people above, but most of the people affected are, you know, ordinary people in the streets.
That's also a problem. Ordinary people are affected, but they kind of, you know, they will still support Putin. That even they become a poor, they will still support Putin. They will say, you know, it's a difficult time, and the food probably is not the most important. And you know, this propaganda really makes horrible things. So people think in the same way, and I honestly don't expect much, you know, something from the Russia side. I really think that everything depends on Ukrainians and how much they will resist, and how much Russia lose due to the economical sanctions and due to the war in Ukraine.
Okay. But then, do you feel like Ukrainians are alone in a way, or do you feel support
No,
from people?
you know, it's one thing to say something when you are here, and another thing to say something when you are there. So when you
That's
see
right.
Russian jets bombing Ukrainian cities, and you don't have something to protect yourself, and you see how many people died every day, then you will probably blame West. They don't support enough. Especially when you see, for instance, Germany resisted to give a weapon to Ukraine. Also, they resisted that any countries that have a German weapon to give it to Ukraine to protect themselves, not to attack
Exactly,
Russia, but
because
for
it's to
protection.
defend. I agree. Yeah.
This makes people really angry, especially in Ukraine. But I had to say that other countries really support a lot of Ukraine because they give, some money. They support financially Ukraine. They also send many countries send some weapons, right? Like these anti-tanks weapons. It's also very, very important.
But this is a tricky point. I agree. I mean, I remember when Spain started sending weapons. I mean, at the beginning, Germany didn't want to, and they kind of stopped it. Then they let it go. But then, even within Spain, some people, I mean, I wouldn't say many, but some people were against sending weapons, and the argument was that it's not to prolong the war. But I mean, I also on your side that it's not about making the war against somebody; it's about defending your own territory.
This is
And
what
this is
Ukrainians
it's a
cannot
right you
understand.
have. I mean,
we have a right. And the point, I think, is also that many countries, especially in Germany, they didn't believe the Ukrainians will resist. So some generals were laughing from Ukrainians, saying, why we should send you weapon if you will be invaded within 2 days.
Okay.
So they really thought if Putin attacks, so this help from other countries will not help, but it could really help. It could help if we have something, to protect ourselves from the Russian jets.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it's also tricky, right? What I have seen from the journalists there, people always ask that restriction from the air, right? But then, I mean, it's tricky that if the West did that, probably it just escalate the whole conflict. That's also true.
Yes.
But that's what I think Ukrainians are asking the most, or at least the president as well, like all the time try to
to close the sky. I don't think it's probably it's also to get some more help from the West. I don't think probably they realizes that they will never close the sky, because it means start the war with Russia. Russia has a nuclear weapon and no one wants that. But I think they probably expecting to get something anti-aircraft, system, so that Ukrainians can shoot Russian jets.
I see. Okay, yeah, that's a different way.
So this is also to defend, not to attack, but to defend. You see.
So apart from that part of weapon, I mean, what do you think people from other countries can do to support Ukraine?
Yeah, it's also very important to do some donations, because a large part of Ukraine is affected. So Ukraine cannot produce in this period the food, right? You cannot produce some elementary things that you need every day. Also, we need something to protect the soldiers and civilians, because they have body armor, the things that, so we don't have enough, and
armor, helmets,
and also
boots,
helmets,
maybe all those kind of things.
Yes. So, and also defending weapon. That's really what can stop Putin. you know, because Putin understands only the language of the force. So we don't trust any negotiation with Russia. We don't. So the only thing we have to defend ourselves, and of course we need some resources and need some help from the outside. Yeah, and also the help of the refugees. So there, I think almost, I don't know, 2 million already crossed the border.
Ukraine already, yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's what I'm more involved at the moment, trying to help with people that are, you know, going out from Ukraine, crossing to Poland.
Yes. I mean, this is really great. So there also in my city here where I am now, a lot of Ukrainians arrive, and we need teachers. They can speak Ukrainian, and you know, so the people don't feel themselves they are in a different country, and they you know, kind of isolated. So I think it's also very important.
How do you see the future for Ukraine? I mean, what would you imagine that will come in the coming years? I don't know.
First of all, I think it's the most important is Ukraine is united, and after this, I believe when this war stops, Ukraine will be more efficient in making the reforms. You know, seeing that how many people died, and you know, those people that do some corruptions, they will be really considered as a really enemy to the country. And yeah, I really hope that Ukraine get rid of the corruption. So I mean,
yeah, but if you, I mean, I could guess if Ukraine managed to you know, to overcome this war, this episode. I mean, people are already united, so I expect that this, you know, sense of being Ukrainian, of being proud of that, or being, you know, will make people to go. I mean, to think more about themselves, right? Think about the people, about sharing what they have, and you know. To some prosperity in the country. But if you can manage to make your own decisions, that's the tricky part. That's what you're fighting at the moment, I think.
Yeah, exactly. This is a really war for our independence, for our being. You know, it's also you know, it's also the defending democracy, right? So you can want to be democratic. Russia is basically a dictatorship, one person rule, you know, and so, and also, you know, West has to defend those qualities of democracy, right? So if people want to live in a better world, to have a right to choose their future, I think is also important, not only for Ukraine, but also for other countries.
For other countries, yeah. This is also something I mean, I want people to realize, especially in you know, in countries far, I mean, not in Europe, in the Americas, or even in Asia, is I mean, there are certain values, right, that we as a society care.
Yeah.
And this is sort of what I think is you're defending now, right?
Exactly.
The thing about freedom and democracy. I mean, and I know that it can sound like a cliche whatsoever, but it's true. So this what's going on. I mean, this is a world changing also in a way, and we don't know what is going to happen next. So it's really important to support. I would say to be on the right side, but yeah, I know many people disagree with my thought, but honestly, I see it this way. And it's not like I hate Russians or I'm Russophobic or whatsoever, but it's you know, there are some values, there are some things the society is built, and if we, you know, we consider important, it's good to preserve them, right?
Yeah, because you know, those values are really very important. You know, after Second World War, you know, those values, you know, they really show that war is something really stupid. You know, there was also some conflicts between Germany and France, right? So, but then they realized, you know, it is stupid really to have a war, and it's better to do some economy together, you know. So then all people got some benefits. And that's why this war was really something, you know, unexpected, because in the 21st century,
nobody
people
could
didn't
imagine
believe.
that.
Yes, and this is also, yeah, you know, there were also some conflicts, right? Like Afghanistan, Serbia,
Kosovo, Iraq,
Kosovo.
Syria,
Yes. This is also a bit different because it's, you know, about the invasion of the country by its neighbor, right? So, and also some propaganda and yeah, and it's again, you know, if every nation has a right to decide their future, or it has to be forced, you know, by.
It's true. Some people even question me, okay, why don't you, I don't know, blame the US when they went for Iraq, for instance, things like that. And I am more like, I mean, it's not like I agree with that, but the fact that they did that, it doesn't mean that I should, you know,
support Russia because
exactly. I mean, okay, why don't we blame both? I mean, the point is, this is not right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, Sergey, thank you very much for all your thoughts, and it was a nice talk. And I hope, you know, people can kind of understand more the conflict, and yeah, support the Ukrainians at this moment is very important.
Yeah, thanks, Alejandro, for inviting me. It was nice to talk to you, and
Thank you.